The small town of Black Hollow had always been a quiet place, nestled deep within the fog-laden valleys of the countryside. It was the kind of town where everyone knew each other, where secrets rarely lasted. But some secrets ran deeper, hidden beneath the earth, buried in the past. For as long as anyone could remember, the old Ashford Manor stood abandoned at the edge of town, a sprawling, decayed mansion with ivy-covered walls and shattered windows. It loomed over the village like a specter. The townsfolk avoided it, whispering tales of the Ashford family's dark demise. Some said the last Ashford, Eleanor, still roamed its halls, her sorrowful wails carried on the wind. Others believed something far worse lurked within. It was on a dare that Daniel Morgan found himself standing before its rusted iron gates one October night. The full moon barely pierced the rolling mist, casting long shadows over the unkempt garden. Armed with nothing but a flashlight and a racing heart, he stepped forward, the gate groaning open as if to welcome him. Inside, the air was thick with decay. The floorboards creaked beneath his weight, dust swirling in the dim beam of his flashlight. His breath came shallow, the silence almost unbearable. Then, a whisper soft, barely audible, "Daniel?" He spun around, the beam of light cutting through the darkness. Nothing, just empty, hollow rooms and peeling wallpaper. He swallowed hard, pressing forward, determined to prove to his friends that he wasn't afraid. Room after room, the house revealed its age-old secrets, portraits with eyes that seemed to follow him. Furniture draped in white sheets like shrouds. Then, he reached the grand staircase, its wooden steps sagging under his weight. He climbed slowly, each step a painful groan against the silence. At the top, the whisper returned. "Daniel, you came back." His blood turned to ice. The voice was unmistakable, soft, sad, and familiar. "Eleanor." A gust of cold air rushed past him, extinguishing his flashlight. Panic gripped him as he fumbled with the switch, but the light refused to return. Then, ahead in the darkness, a soft glow emerged. A candle, flickering in the void, illuminating a figure in a tattered white gown. Eleanor Ashford. Her eyes, hollow yet filled with recognition, locked onto his. "See, you promised you would come back for me." Memories ones he didn't remember having flooded his mind. Laughter beneath the manor's chandeliers, whispered confessions, a love long forgotten. He staggered back, the weight of realization crushing him. I don't understand. "You left me, Daniel," she whispered, stepping forward, "and I waited. I waited so long." Pain shot through his skull, images flashing before him, a man in old-fashioned clothing, a love affair, a tragic betrayal. He saw himself, but not as he was now, another life, another time. Eleanor raised a ghostly hand, brushing it against his cheek. "Stay with me this time." The house groaned, the walls trembling. Daniel felt his vision blur, the past and present colliding. He tried to move, to run, but his body felt anchored, his heart bound to hers. A sharp noise broke the trance, a distant voice calling his name. Daniel gasped, suddenly aware of his surroundings. He was still in the manor, but the candle had vanished. The air was colder now, the whispers louder. "Daniel, where are you?" The voice belonged to his best friend, Mark. Reality snapped back, and with every ounce of willpower, he turned and ran. He barreled down the staircase, ignoring the shadows that seemed to lunge at him, ignoring the whispered pleas of Eleanor. The front door stood ajar, the mist rolling in like a tide. He broke through, gasping for air as he collapsed onto the overgrown path. Mark reached him, gripping his shoulders. "Jesus, man, we heard you screaming." Daniel's breaths came in ragged gasps. I saw her. She knows me." Mark exchanged a worried glance with the others. "Come on, let's get out of here." As they fled the property, Daniel stole one last glance at the house. In an upstairs window, just behind the cracked glass, Eleanor stood watching, a silent promise in her eyes. Black Hollow remained unchanged, but Daniel knew better. He had awakened something that night, something that had been waiting for him. Days passed, but the whispers never left him. They followed him in dreams, in the rustling of leaves, in the shadows cast by the moonlight. And each night, as he closed his eyes, He swore he could hear her voice. "Come back to me, Daniel." The following week, Daniel found himself drawn back to the manor. He had tried to resist, had ignored the way his heart pounded whenever he thought of Eleanor, but the pull was too strong. As the clock struck midnight, he stood once more before the rusted gates, breath clouding in the chill air. Mark had warned him, so had his other friends, but they didn't understand. Something inside him belonged to Eleanor, had always belonged to her. This time, the gate opened before he even touched it. He hesitated, then stepped inside. The house was waiting. The air was colder, heavier. As he crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind him. His flashlight flickered, then died. Only the sound of his breathing filled the silence. Then, a whisper. "You came back." A candle flared to life at the top of the staircase. Eleanor stood there, her pale face illuminated by the flickering light. She smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "I knew you would." Daniel swallowed hard. "I don't remember everything, but I know you. I feel it." She descended the stairs, her movements slow and deliberate. "You were always meant to come back to me. We were never meant to be apart." A chill ran down his spine. "What do you mean?" She reached out, taking his hand in her ghostly fingers. "You died here, Daniel, long ago, and you've been coming back ever since." The house groaned, the walls whispering secrets lost to time. Memories surged again of a life, of love, of betrayal, and of a terrible fall down the very staircase before him. His vision blurred, his knees buckled. And as the darkness swallowed him whole, Eleanor's voice was the last thing he heard. "This time, you'll stay, forever."